You're listening to the Hazard Ground Podcast, with service members from across the military sharing their stories of combat and survival. And now, here's your host, Mark Zeno.
Welcome into the Hazard Ground Podcast. As always, we appreciate you joining us each and every week. Super excited for this week's episode for a bunch of reasons. But before we get to the episode, want to remind you guys about our brand new website, hazardground.com. Well, that's the same, but everything else about our website is flat out awesome. Please check it out. Every former episode of the Hazard Ground is on the website. You can access it from there, multiple different ways. Just a brand new look, a brand new layout, making it much more user-friendly for all you guys out there to keep up with what we have going on the show. Brand new logo as well. We hope you guys like that. I want to hear some feedback from you guys on the logo and the website. Let us know what you like and what you don't like. Obviously, all this stuff is for you guys, so love to hear what you guys think about it, good, bad, or indifferent. One of the things on our website that you can do is you can send us a note. Please do so. There's a place for you guys to drop us a line, tell us what you think, and also give listener suggestions. And that's why this week's episode is so special to us, because it came from a listener, a Hazard Ground listener that said, hey, I'd like for you guys to tell this story. And boom, we went out, researched it, did it, found the individual, got them, and you're going to hear that story coming up here in just a few moments. Also on the website, that Amazon banner is there. You can find it on the sponsors page. You can find it on the main page. Just scroll down to the bottom. You click on that Amazon banner, do your normal Amazon shopping. We'll get a percentage of what you spend, and we'll donate it right back to some of the amazing charities that we've featured here on the Hazard Ground. Follow us on all those social media sites, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. As I said, keep up with the show and everything that we have going on. And with all that said, let's get on to this week's incredible episode. Joining us this week, our first member of the non-American military, but his story details a battle in Iraq alongside of American forces in 2004. He is British Army Color Sergeant Brian Wood, MC, and he joins us on the Hazard Ground Podcast. Brian, welcome. Thank you for being here.
No, it's a pleasure, and thanks for inviting me and being the first UK guest.
Yeah, very excited because, look, I mean, this war that we're in right now over the last 20 years now has gone well beyond the American military, and we certainly have had a lot of help throughout the years, especially in Iraq with coalition forces, with the British military being a big part of that. Your story is one of a battle called Danny Boy that many people may be familiar with, depending on how much they know about the war in Iraq. But this happened in southern Iraq in the middle of May in 2004. And for those who aren't familiar, the British forces occupied a lot of southern Iraq after the initial invasion. That was one of the main areas of focus where they worked throughout their entire time there. So let's kind of start talking about the Battle of Danny Boy. And how long were you there before you guys got into contact? I mean, what was kind of your mission as you were told when you got there?
Yeah, so our mission initially was it was a peacekeeping mission, but about a month prior to us going into country, we started to get a lot of intel fed down to the chain of command down to us that things have changed. There was an uprising called by militia leaders, and within them Shura meetings, they basically broke ceasefire, and Muqtada al-Sadr, who was the main militia leader in Al-Amara and kind of run the southern province, he basically said all coalition will get smashed. So we're full on war fighting. So when we went into country, we done a fighting handover takeover, which we have never done before. I mean, that was the first real kinetic experience I had at that time. I was 23. I was a young commander, a lance corporal. And clearly at that age, I still had responsibilities. I still had men and women under my command, mostly men, because in the British infantry, we don't have any women, only female medics. So there was a responsibility. And I've never tested myself in combat. I knew that I was going into a kinetic situation and operation. And I was it was a mixture of emotions, really. I was eager to go. I'm very patriotic. I love my country, and we were deployed there for a reason. So, we believed in the mission commander mission statement, and we went out there. And like I said, it was a fighting handover takeover.
Let me ask you, Brian, because, you mentioned your love of country. We hear that a lot from our guests, but that country is America. Your country, obviously, the United Kingdom and Britain and everything else. Did you ever feel like you guys didn't need to be there or didn't belong there fighting a war that America had to deal with?
I don't know if it's a war that America had to deal with. Look, we're allies for a reason. We've been allies for centuries. You look, you can backdate our history. So, I would never look at it as a single country's war. I think wherever America goes, British will go, and wherever British will go, the Americans will go. That's how close knit we are. Right. And that's the mutual respect. I know there's other allies that we work alongside, whether it be the Danish, the French, the Australian. I've personally worked along some very good other nations. However, clearly American being our closest ally. So, and like I said, we've got a lot of history. So I wouldn't say it was a war that kind of America had to fight on its own, because, like I said, I don't think there ever is anything that simultaneously Americans deal with. I think there's always that collective role of responsibility, and we kind of go together as it stands.
I got to tell you, it's so refreshing to hear that. It almost makes me feel more patriotic knowing that you have a brother that, even though we serve under a different flag and under a different military, that is willing to take up arms with you. It's just it's refreshing to hear. There's a lot of dissension in the world. It almost makes me feel more patriotic as an American.
No, absolutely. And let me tell you a quick story before we go into Danny Boy, because I think it's important. My second tour of Iraq, 2009, we were in a forward operating base, and it was controlled by a lot of waterways. So we had a SEAL team, an American SEAL team, join us, and they was only with us. It was called Leaf Island. We were on a little island. It was maintained by British, and with that we had kind of small ribs and stuff that the engineers had, and we would go out on kind of water patrols and stuff like that. Anyway, we had a SEAL team embedded with us for, I think it was 8 to 10 days, and I got to know them really well. And it was a good insight for the lads who, I was in command of, this time kind of being 30 men, because at this point I was now a sergeant, so I had a lot of responsibility. And we were embedded with the SEAL team, really refreshing, really cool, professional, great guys. And they were on our rations, so we looked after them and fed them. And this commander, they were due to leave the island, and we said our farewells, and he said, "Look, listen, I'm going to bring you some decent food," because we were eating off menu A, which was our British menu, and it was just the same rations every single day. And 10 days, it's quite a long time to live off the same sort of exactly the same menu. But we were living off that for weeks on end. But he said, "Look, listen, I'm going to get an air asset and drop you off some MREs." And I was like, "Yeah, whatever." Listen, this is a true story. This is a true story, right? So they go off, they get picked up on their helos. They go, and I think it's about maybe 4 days later, we had an unexpected helo inbound. And normally, clearly, I know when we're due deliveries, refueling, etc. So I manage all of that. But this was not a UK inbound. So I was like, kind of, because the HLS, the heli landing site, wasn't secure, it wasn't cleared. And anyway, this American heli come in with an underslung, the door gunner hung out, big thumbs up. They unclipped this underslung. It landed on our strip. We went out, collected it, and it was like loads of 10-man ration packs and stuff like that from the Americans. And, what he did, and, maintenance of morale or maintaining morale of forces is very key. And what he did there was a game changer for us. But what I did subsequently was when we went back, when we were relieved from that island, I went back into the Basra International Airport where we were. I went into the American sector and I tracked him down, and I personally thanked him for what he did.
That is awesome.
Yeah, pretty cool story.
That is an amazing, holy crap. That is...
Yeah. I speak about it in my book. We'll talk about that later, but I released the book 3 months ago, and it's gone pretty wild and gone into the Sunday Times best-selling list and stuff like that. But I talk about that in detail in my book. So it's a pretty cool allied story.
It's just, it's amazing, what combat does, and the bonds it creates. And we talk about all the time. And I think that goes for any country, for anybody who takes up arms and fights for a cause. the people that you do it alongside with, regardless of their background, regardless of where they grew up and who they serve under and what the command they're under and all that. Being side by side with somebody for any period of time in combat creates a bond that is unbreakable, and I think that's proof of it right there. That's an amazing story, Brian.
Yeah, no, it's pretty cool, right?
All right, so from the happy times, let's get back to what began as the Battle of Danny Boy. May 14th, 2004 was the date, and tell me how that morning starts. Like, what is it, a normal day for you guys?
It was kind of a normal day, but we were getting mortared like so frequently. It was horrendous incoming at this period. I mean, we had to go in dribs and drabs to, we call it the cookhouse, to get food because we couldn't have many troops in one place at one time because of the threat. And we started to get some rockets coming into camp, and we were on 5 minutes notice to move. So we were basically crashed out as a kind of an immediate responder to find, fix and destroy the mortar. We call it a mortar base plate. So basically a mortar team from the militia had been firing as there was an identification on the firing point, and we were tasked in our armoured vehicles to go out there, find, fix and engage. So 2 vehicles went to do that, and another 2 held back and set up snap VCPs, vehicle checkpoints, to basically stop any vehicles which look vulnerable or suspicious, and pull them over and do a search from inside to out, just to see if there's any trafficking of weapons. And that was my vehicle initially. So we were tasked to go and do a VCP, a vehicle checkpoint. So once a vehicle went firm, it was me as the ground commander to get out of the vehicle and kind of orchestrate the vehicle checkpoint, which I did. And I'm always in constant communication with the vehicle commander. And we were carrying out these stopping these vehicles, checking the vehicles, and then all of a sudden on the radio, I get told to stop what I'm doing immediately and get back into the vehicle. There's a situation which just happened. So I did that. I stopped what I was doing out in the sort of desert main. There's a main supply route called Route 6, which ran from Basra to Baghdad, and it was one route in, one route out, very vulnerable route, and we were on that route. So I got told to stop what I was doing, get in the vehicle, and getting into the back of an armoured vehicle. It's probably about I would say touching 41 degrees. So going into an armoured vehicle with no aircon, I mean, it is just like an oven. And I know that there will be our US, brothers out there and sisters who can sympathise with me that it is brutal heat, and it is carnage heat.
And just for clarification, when you say 41 degrees, you mean centigrade, Celsius.
Yeah.
For the Americans who don't do the conversion, let's say about 25 degrees Celsius is about 87 degrees Fahrenheit. So kick it up to, you're well over 110 degrees.
Yeah, exactly. And hydration was a big thing. And it was initially a problem for us because we started having soldiers going down with heat exhaustion because there was not enough water intake. And obviously we were drinking boiling water, so it's always harder to drink hot water because you're clutching onto some cold, but you never get that. So you're having to really force it down you. And we had some problems, but we kind of got used to that and understood the maintaining of our water discipline, which we did. And so I get into the back of the vehicle, put on the headset, which internally now I can speak to the driver, the gunner, and the commander. And my commander was a lad called Stick Broom. So I've asked him what's going on, and he said there's been an incident at a checkpoint called Danny Boy, and there's been an ambush on coalition forces, it was actually a Scottish regiment, the Argyll and Southern Highlanders, had been involved in an ambush. They'd taken 2 casualties. One was a gunshot wound to the tricep, which had taken his tricep off, and the other one was a fragmentation blast from a grenade, and someone was bleeding out from the inner thigh. So that was the only thing I got. That was the only information that I was told. I was like, yeah, roger that. Told the boys in the back what we were going to do. There was me plus 2 other dismounted troops in the back, so in total 3. And I told them what was going on, what we're going to do, and then kind of off we went. And on the way down this Route 6, which is a main supply route, I probably reckon we're moving for about 15 minutes when, I've been in some ambushes before because 2 weeks previous to Danny Boy, I was actually blowing up myself and was hit by 2 AT-4 Soviet Union Soviet Union missiles. And I experienced some carnage in the back of the vehicle there, where I had to spend a number of time in a field hospital. But so I'd been in an ambush before, but this shook our vehicle to a grinding halt. And our vehicle was a 33-ton suppressor. You know, it's a massive armored fighting vehicle. So it really caused a lot of confusion initially. The gunner and commander were trying to understand where this kind of wave of firepower come from. They tried to identify, they did, and then they started to return fire. And being in the back of this vehicle, there's a mixture of emotions because, one, previous to what I'm experiencing now, I've already been hit and I've already been a casualty from an ambush. So I knew the vehicle was penetrable. So I have a number of emotions going through my body at this point. But I kind of managed that and just kind of keep the boys in the back of the vehicle up to date what's going on. And listeners will know, those who are military, it's very important that you give the commander and gunner some time, because the radio feed is going mad. They're under enough pressure as it is to get their job done. So they don't need the added pressure initially of me asking them straight away what's going on, what's happening, who are you engaging.
Sure.
I know that. So I give them a kind of a cigar moment, a pause 2-3, let them deal with the initial engagement. And then I started asking the questions. Stick, what's happening? We've been hit. We've been in ambush. They look like they're in dug-in trench positions, zigzag type positions. And I was like, okay, what's the strengths? 15 to 20 militia fighters. What weapon systems? AK-47, the traditional Middle Eastern weapon systems, Dushkas,
right.
AK-47, RPGs, and so on and so forth. I was like, yeah, okay, roger that. And he told me to wait. He said, wait out. And then the Raden, which is a 30mm cannon, and a 7.62 chain gun was smashing this position.
Wow.
But so I was asking him, I asked him what I needed to know. I then relayed it to the guys in the back because they can't hear this conversation internally because there's only me what can speak to the commander and gunner. So I verbally brief what's going on to the boys in the back who are looking at me now. And yeah, I mean, he then said, we're having no effect. The vehicle is having no effect because they're just getting down and they're getting up at a different position and they're smashing us again. He said, so listen, Woody, prepare you and your men to get out of this vehicle and launch a full frontal assault on this dug-in enemy stronghold. So initially, I was like, that's pretty powerful stuff to be told. Yeah. So I asked him actually to say it again, to repeat the word of command, because it's not very often you get told to do that. So I asked him, I said, just say that again. He said, look, we're having no joy. We need boots on the ground. And I want you to kind of prepare you and your men to get out. We'll fire you in. We'll give you fire support. But I want you to go and launch a full assault on that trench. So I was like, okay, so this is where we talk about fear. And I don't care who you are. I don't care how macho you think you are. In that situation, fear starts to creep in. And I'm only human. So it started to creep in to where I was in my thought process. But it's how you manage that fear. And how I managed it was I used it to actually drag me out of the vehicle, to make me lead by example, so to be the first out of that vehicle. So I said to him, okay, roger that. Give me 2 minutes to brief the guys. So I told the boys in the back what's going to happen. Me plus them two are going to get out of this vehicle. We're going to try and initially get to a bit of cover, so at least we can identify where the firing point was, because at this point I'm in the back of this vehicle, it's dark. It's boiling. There's only one little glass window out the back of the armoured door, and you can't see anything out of it because of sand, grit, condensation. There's nothing you can see out of it. So I needed to get to a position where I would get out and at least I'll give myself a chance to go forward. So I told that to the guys, told that to my commander, and he said, yeah, once the door opens to your 10 o'clock, there's a prominent dried out wadi-type ditch, irrigation. Go to that, and then you will then watch my tracers, because we had a 4-bit, we call it a 1 in 4-bit. So every fourth round from the chain gun.
Yep, we have the same thing. Yeah. Yeah,
exactly. Because you can have a 2-bit or 4-bit. So 4-bit is what we have in the Warriors. And so I said to Stick, my commander, we're good to go. And he said, right, mini HL. So he was going to give us a 5-second countdown. and then the door, because the door is on a hydraulic system. So when you press it in the back and it hydraulically opens the door, because it's an armored door, it's so heavy, you can't just open it like a car door. So it was, 5, 4, 3, and on 3, the whole vehicle, the vehicle just went so loud, so much fire support. The door opened, and then what was muffled in the back came into a deafening cascade of violence. And I just remember squinting because it was so bright out there as well. But once the door opened fully, I could see straight away where I needed to go. I knew where that ditch was. So I just ran hard, fast and aggressive to the ditch. I got down in the prone position on my front. I looked to my left-hand side and I saw the bravest of 2 other soldiers following me. We then got onto the ditch. We lined up in a 3, and I told the boys to check themselves because you know what it's like, full of adrenaline. It's like an out-of-body experience. Unless you were hit stone cold outright and killed, you wouldn't know if you were being hit at the time.
Right.
So I told us to check our legs and make sure that there's no visible signs of being hit. And then we had a pause, calm yourself moment. So we call it a chill cigar, like I said, a cigar moment where you analyse what is actually going on in this situation, because there is another vehicle, another warrior armoured fighting vehicle had now turned up, and it's now also suppressing over our heads into this trench. So, I kind of took a pause, 2, 3, sucked in a bit of Iraqi desert, and then just trying to then I needed to go and have a look where actually the enemy were. So I'd done like a meerkat moment. So I shuffled forward and peered over the top, and I could see the tracer smashing the position, and I knew exactly where it was. And it was about 120 metres to our front. And then I kind of just done a bit of we call it a combat estimate. So can we go right flanking, or can we go left flanking, or do we just go straight up the killing area, up the middle, and just hope for the best? And then on the right flanking, I wasn't happy because I didn't know about flank interference. It didn't feel safe going over to the right-hand flank. The left-hand flank was too close to our vehicles, and blue on blue was a big thing for me. So I didn't want to risk having fracture site involved. So I just said, look, the best thing to do is just, with great British core values, grit, courage and determination, we get up from behind this, we go over the top like our ancestors did, or like our forebears did back in the Second World War, and we just go for it, and we just hope for the best. So that was a decision that we made. But when I was talking to the lads, another 2 British soldiers joined us randomly from the other vehicle that had just turned up. So now there's 5 of us on the ground. So that's pretty much a section now. So, I've got a little bit more belief now because there's 5 of us. So I spoke to the other commander, because there was another commander on the ground at this point. So I had a conflag with him. He agreed with me that we were going to go up and just go straight down the middle, but we were going to work in a 3 and a 2. So we always have 1 foot on the ground. We call it a leapfrogging effect. So once we break that cover...
We do the same thing.
Exactly. 1 foot on the ground, and we just go hard, fast and aggressive straight into this main position. So, we agreed, radioed into the vehicles. Then my radio went down, so it was mostly hand signals and stuff. And, the time had come. So 3 of us, me, a Fijian called Tatawaka, and Rushi, another lad in my team, went up over the top. And as soon as we broke cover, that was it. We were in a 2-way firing range. That's it, full-on kinetic violence at each other. And I know in the British military, we say that effective enemy fire is when rounds and ammunition is in and around your feet or zipping past your ears. And this is kind of how it was now. It was like bees were buzzing everywhere.
Right.
And we just went first bound, then we were suppressing, we were engaging, and then the second bound, the other 2 joined us, went forward of us in a leapfrog effect. They started to engage. We got closer. We didn't hear. So what we said was, if anyone gets hit, we continue the main effort, which was to close and destroy that main position. That was the main effort. So we just keep going, even if it's 1 person left, you just keep going and try and do as much damage to this enemy force as we can before, we go back and account for our own casualties. Because there was only a small number on the ground, that's what we had to do. And I knew there was 15 to 20 militia, so we were quite heavily outnumbered. But we're getting closer, and we got closer. Now we're 50 metres away, and we're having some effect. I can start seeing now bodies in and around the trench positions that had been hit, militia fighters who are dead. I started to get like 60 meters away. Now I can start to see some militia fighters now withdrawing from that position. So we've got the upper hand. We've got the foothold now on this ground, on this battleground. And we got closer, maybe about 80 meters away. And we were just about to go into, we call it a pairs. So we just roll it up. You roll straight into that position and clear it. And as we were about 90 meters away, you can hear them vocally, shouting and communicating with each other. And we were just about to go in and kind of finish off what they started. And all of a sudden, with a split second, they threw their weapons down and surrendered. And, like I say, I do a few kind of speaking engagements, and I say to the audience, when you're fighting for everything, when you're fighting for your life, your comrades, you are in such a possessed state of mind that I do understand how people do get it wrong sometimes, because you're just kind of you're fighting for everything. You're fighting to live. So they threw their weapons down. They surrendered. All of a sudden, with a split second, we now have to switch fire, and we now have to stop firing and take these as POWs because they've surrendered. We've got rules of engagement, lawfare that we have to adhere to. Sure. So it was confusing initially. I mean, I was like 23. I've never done this before. This is close and personal. This is a close quarter, situations, where it's hand-to-hand fighting now. And I kind of assessed what was going on. We were communicating with each other. There was weapons everywhere, so we were trying to get them out of reach of the militia because I didn't want anyone to be a chancer and kind of take an opportunist and spray us.
Sure,
so I was trying to sort this out. There's bodies at this point everywhere, but they'd been hit with 30 mil, so you can only imagine. There was not a lot left of them. There was pieces everywhere, and I'm trying to deal with all of this. And we managed to kind of segregate. We prioritised, the POWs. We'd done as best as what we could on the ground that day because, we didn't have any prisoner of war sort of kit that we used. So we didn't have like the proper goggles. We just kind of had to bastardize things and kind of improvise, which was shamags and their fighting kit we put around their eyes and stuff like that. And then as we were doing this, we had a secondary engagement. So now I was in this trench with enemy dead, POWs, weaponry everywhere. It was carnage. Like in the newspapers, in the British newspapers and on TV, it was a textbook British attack. And it was far from it. There was confusion. There was it was a bit carnage, if I'm honest. But we still maintained, a clear purpose on the situation which was happening. But it wasn't textbook because we'd never done this before. I mean, but we're still alive, so we've done something right. And we managed to kind of sort all this out. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, my company sergeant major turns up. And as you know, he's an incredible, also most sergeant majors are incredible leaders of men. They are inspirational. They are, just incredible leaders. So my sergeant major turned up and was like, right, Woody, just give me a quick back brief on what's happened. So I told him we were engaged, we were ambushed, and we went forward, we've now taken this position. And he asked me a massive integrity question. And he asked me if the battlefield was clear. And for a split second, I actually wanted to say it was clear because I was lucky to be alive at this point. So lucky to be alive. And but because of my values and what I stand for, I said, sir, it's not clear. And he said, what do you mean? I said, I've seen militia fighters fall back. So the battle space isn't clear. And he said to me, right, put a fresh magazine on. You're going to come with me for a clearance patrol. And I was like, okay, roger that. Put a fresh magazine on. And me and the company sergeant major went forward, and within 80 meters we would just come up with into more close quarter fighting again. But this was like about 2 meters away, so we were proper in amongst it now. And he initially, I seen a flicker from the right hand side. I shouted target right, and he put 3 to 4 rounds into his sort of chest cavity area, and he went down. He went move. As I've moved, another militia from the left hand side, which was my side, basically come up from about 1.5 meters away. I could probably reach out and grab him, and I've just taken a knee, put 5 or 6 rounds into his throat area. He's gone down coughing and choking and spluttering. We've moved forward, and I've actually said to a bit of moral courage, I said to my sergeant major, sir, we're really vulnerable. We've come now 100 and so on meters from the main position. We need reinforcements. We need to go back. And he said, I agree. And on the way back, we bounded back. And then on the left-hand side of my kind of provisional visual, I see another flicker. And as I've looked, it was another 2 fighters which stood up. But then they threw their weapons down and surrendered. So I was like, shit. So I brought my weapon to bear. We then had to go through the arrest and restraint. But on the approach, when I was approaching these 2 militia fighters now, I recognised one. I thought, I recognise you. And what it was, he was in my... we mentored him my platoon mentored him, because obviously we go out to these countries and we need to try and stabilise that country. We mentor, we show them a few bits and bobs of what we do and how we operate. So he was actually an Iraqi policeman who was in my syndicate, who I was basically trying to nurture, and he's gone and turned against. Yeah, he's turned against me.
What did that do for you in that moment? Were you disappointed? Were you shocked?
Yeah.
Were you hurt?
No, of course. I was very shocked and angry. But he had no remorse. He looked at me and just smirked. And I was like, fucking hell, you just don't, it's hard enough, it's hard enough fighting in foreign fields, but then to have someone who you think is with you switch against you, it's a bit of graft. But I just had to put that to the back of my mind, and we arrested them. We took them back to the main position. And at this point, there is so many vehicles, British vehicles now on site. There is a Challenger 2 battle tank. There is other warrior fighting vehicles. There's a lot of moving and shaking now. And I've gone back to where the main position was, and that was the first time that I sat down on the bank to drink some water. And I talked through this within 15 to 20 minutes, but actually took 3 hours to clear that whole battle space.
Wow.
So it was a lot of fighting going on. There was... it was a lot of confusion, a lot of fighting, and there's a lot of trauma on the battlefield.
Brian, take me back to that decision. You're at the firing point. It's the 3 of you, and then 2 more show up. You make the decision to get up and charge over the hill, so to speak, right in the face of the enemy.
Yeah.
If you don't do that, how do you envision the rest of that battle goes?
It's a good question, because I don't know how the rest of that battle would have went.
Do you feel like you guys would have been overrun, or did you still have a chance from if you stayed where you were?
Hey, listen, we've always got a chance.
Right.
You're always in with a chance. It doesn't matter who you are or what you're doing. If you believe in yourself and in your skills, there's a chance. And if you, start to kind of move away from that, in my opinion, it's kind of poor leadership, because you don't go into a deal kind of half-cocked. You go into a deal with full belief that you can achieve the unachievable. A lot of people said it was the unachievable. It's not the unachievable, because we achieved it. And not for one moment did I think it was unachievable. I thought we're in with a chance, and sometimes big shots come in. So therefore you lead, and you have the courage and the grit and the determination, what all of our values stand for. And you go, and if you die, you've died trying. And that's a big thing for me. So it was like, we're going to go, and we're going to give it our best shot. And if people are hit, we'll go back for them when position's clear. That's how it was. And, it's difficult to kind of look back and say, if we didn't go over the top, or it's big, but, we're always going to go over the top. We're always going to go. So, yeah.
There were reports that, bayonets were used. And the only reason I bring that up is because we have bayonets too. And the general thought process is, if you have to use this thing, your world is totally screwed. This isn't the last line of defense, your bayonet. This is the I'm going down and it's not going to end well sort of, tip of the spear, if you will. I don't know if you had to use them personally, but, when you're in that kind of close quarters with somebody, I can imagine it's different than just pulling the trigger.
Yeah, when I was in the courtroom, and we'll talk about the aftermath in a bit, but they really focused on bayonets, but this was frustrating for me when I was in the courtroom, because these people who were questioning my tactics and questioning British military tactics, bayonets are fixed, because it's a standard operating procedure. If you're going into close quarters, you fix a bayonet. That is what it says in lawfare. That's what it says in warfare. That is an infantry standard drill. I said, you're bringing this up because you don't understand this. You haven't brought this day into context. You don't know what's going around. So you don't know how we operate because you're asking these questions. And like I said, this was just a basic drill. It was, we're going in, we're going to conduct trench war fighting. Therefore, bayonets are fixed. And I personally couldn't fix a bayonet because I had a weapon system which wouldn't allow that because I had an underslung grenade launcher. So when we as British weapon systems, we can't fix a bayonet onto an underslung because there's not enough gap.
We have the same thing, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So other people in that section, of course they did, but I didn't micromanage that. That's a drill. They carried out because they get taught and it's like a drill. So, did they use it? I was so fixated on what was going on, that I didn't really concentrate, but I'm sure that bayonets were used as like they cross-examined me on another commander using the bayonet, and I said to them in the courtroom, good, they should be using that bayonet because it's a drill, because he would have used the extreme force that he needs to till that target is eliminated and that threat is done with. So if he's used his bayonet, he's either ran out of ammunition or he's had a stoppage, and the secondary rule is you engage bayonet and you put it into the guts and he's down. So if he's done that, then it's good drills. So I sat down for a drink of water, and then because it was such a big pre-planned attack on coalition forces, our brigade HQ thought that the main militia leader was either now being killed because there was 20 killed that day and 9 taken as POWs, so 29. It's pretty punchy firepower from the enemy. So they believed that the main militia leader, Muqtada al-Sadr, was either dead or he was now a POW. So a crazy order was made by Brigade HQ, and that was, now we have to go back and pick up these dead bodies and load them onto our vehicles and then take them back to our main operating base, so our FOB. And I was like, shit, that just doesn't happen. What are we doing that for? That we just leave them in situ and we should be going. So, but as a young commander, you do what you're told, and we had to then go back and pick these bodies. And I tell you what, right? And I'm not too scared to say this, that it's a demand in the human headspace, taking another human's life, enemy forces or whatever. But when it's close and personal, and you hear them last gasping, they're choking, it's a demand in the headspace to see them go down and how they did go down when it's close and personal. To then having to go back and pick this young 17-year-old fighter up who is lifeless and carry him onto a vehicle, and also recovering bodies that were all over the place, arms missing, guts hanging out. It was horrendous. It ended people, to be honest. It really did have that significant effect on the headspace, but it was horrendous. So anyway, we spent the next 40 minutes recovering these fighters and loading them onto the back of our armoured vehicles now. And we had kind of 2 vehicles. We loaded the bodies into these vehicles, and then we made our way back to Abanaji, which was north. We were in Abanaji, which was north than Basra, and it was about an hour away from Baghdad. So we were kind of a lot north than Basra. And we got back to our FOB, or our camp, and all the floodlights were on. And I remember getting back, and the regimental sergeant major, his provost team were there, and I got out of the vehicle, said, look, what do you want to do with this vehicle? My vehicle's got like quite a lot of dead bodies in there. He said, right, the doctor is up at the RAP, the regimental aid post. Can you ground command the vehicle to there? He's waiting for you to then unload the bodies and put them onto the body bags. So I was like, okay, now at this point, it's dark. The smells which were coming from the vehicles was dropping. I mean, you can only imagine, feces, blood, guts. The smell was horrendous. It was just horrendous. Anyway, I got to where the doctor was. The doctor had all the body bags laid out. He said, right, Woody, what you need to do is get the back door open and then lay the bodies out. And I was like, okay, no worries. So I said to the lads, right, get the back door open. And like I said before, the back door's on a hydraulic system. So when you press the button, the hydraulics push it open for you. So when the lads went to press it open, nothing happened. And those who the only other way to open this door is actually you have to do it manually. So you crawl through the tunnel, the turret, go through the back and actually hand crank this door open. So someone's got to do this now. and this vehicle now has got all these bodies in the back, and no one wants to do it. So what we done, we played paper, scissors, stones,
right,
on whoever lost would have to do this, and it was horrendous. Anyway, the driver had lost, so he put a shemag around his face, and he had a head torch on, and you can't even imagine the state of this stuff that was in the back of these vehicles, all stacked up on top of each other. But anyway, he climbed through this vehicle, and he starts to hand crank this door open, and we're talking to him, we're trying to reassure him everything's okay, keep going, keep working hard, and I could hear him moaning and stuff about it. And then all of a sudden, the door was kind of wide enough open to go through it sideways, to squeeze through it sideways. And I could hear shouting and screaming in the back of this vehicle. So I was like, what's going on there? And then next thing I see the driver squeeze out and then just sprinting, shouting, he's alive, he's alive. And I was like, he's alive? So I've looked into the back of the vehicle, and he wasn't alive because half of his head was missing, but he was sat up bolt right with his eyes open, and it must have just freaked him out in the back, and he's like ran. But that maybe 30-second incident ruined that driver's career. It ended his career in an instance, and he's still suffering from that traumatic experience now.
Wow.
So, it was kind of a crazy day. And then we were full of, our kit was covered in blood, and then we had to go through like hepatitis checks and stuff like that. And then we had to take our kit off and get burnt and get incinerated. And it was just that tour kind of carried on. It was a very famous tour for violence and kinetic engagements. But
sure.
Yeah, obviously getting home, and then years later, these crazy allegations which kicked off.
Well, yeah, let's get to that, because that was 2004. So 5 years later, over 5 years, 5.5 years later, in 2009, you guys find out from the British Minister of State for the Armed Forces that there was an investigation called the Housewood Inquiry.
Yeah.
So where are you when you first hear this, and what are you told?
So I was actually on my commando course to earn my Green Beret. So I was down at Lympstone on a 9-week course, and it's, those of you know, earning your Green Beret is quite a hard course. So it's an arduous course. And I got back. I was on week 5. I got back to where I was staying in the lines, and I had about 20 missed calls from my wife. So I thought initially it was something happened to my kids. So I phoned up and said, what's happening? And she said, look, there's a letter here for you. And I was like, okay. And she said that it states that there's going to be a public inquiry, and the allegations that you're up against are murder, mutilation, and mistreatment. And I said to Lucy, I said, hey, listen, is that definitely got my name on it? And she said, yeah, it's from the Battle of Danny Boy. And then I kind of thought, how? So I said, look, don't worry, it would be okay. Let me just speak to my regiment. So I hung up on her, phoned my regiment, spoke to my Battalion 2IC, second in command, and he said, yeah, Woody, it's happening. And I just couldn't get my head around it. One, I was angry because the way I found out, my wife opening this letter.
Sure,
so
yeah,
no one phoned me. No one actually came down, because I was serving in Germany at this point. So we were posted in Germany. And I was frustrated that no one came over and actually spoke to me face to face, because I think that's good leadership. But some people make some poor decisions, and I kind of can forgive that. But I was a bit angry on the way I kind of found out. But yeah, I mean, I didn't think they were going to get any traction, let alone it going out into the public domain. And then that was it. It was a game changer for me and for my fellow soldiers on the ground that day.
Now, what the Iraq Historic Abuse Team, where did that come from?
You know what? I'm not even the subject matter expert on it now, because I was fighting my own personal battle to kind of clear my name. And,
right.
And the thing is, right, when I got home from that tour, later on, about 6 months later, I found out that I'd been awarded the Military Cross. And then I went to Buckingham Palace. Then the Queen, presented me with this Military Cross. So then all of a sudden, I've been given this medal, which is one of the highest medals for valor and gallantry, to all of a sudden now fighting to clear my name. And I thought, how has this even come about? This is crazy. And there's basically a team which acts on behalf of Iraqi participants, and they basically go and analyze what these allegations are, and they either say they've got credible evidence that something happened, or they haven't. And it just got traction, and the government ended up paying money to. There's a famous lawyer in the UK, and his name's called Phil Shiner, and he was gold standard at one point. He was the kind of celebrity lawyer everyone wanted on human rights. He was an award winner, and he was at one point very, very good. So he then come up with these allegations on during the Battle of Danny Boy that there were innocent farmers. We captured them, we took them back to camp, we lined them up along a line and executed them, massacred them. And I thought, how has that even got traction? How? There's no evidence. I mean, but it did. And so what was happening was Phil Shiner was paying bungs of money to Iraqi agents in Iraq, meeting them in Pakistan, and then delivering them these allegations. He was then coming back, and then he would say, I've got evidence that this happened during the Battle of Danny Boy, ill treatment was done, and these were murdered, and they were executed, and they were so on and so forth. And I was like, this is just crazy stuff, but it got traction. And then all of a sudden, there was a big program in the UK called Panorama on Whose Orders. And then that's it. It's all over the press. And then I'm getting phone calls, I'm getting text messages from family, friends, asking me what they've seen. Is it true? Because everyone knew that I was involved in the Battle of Danny Boy. I was decorated by the Queen for it. So I was then getting bombarded, and all of a sudden I'm now having to justify my actions. And it's a nightmare. It was carnage. And it took another 5 years to actually get until I was in the dock. So, from the Battle of Danny Boy to where we are now, it's 10 years until I was actually in the dock getting cross-examined. It was just, I was let down as well, because not one person from the Ministry of Defence or from the government reached out to me and said, listen, what do you need? What support do you need? Do you need a ring of steel? Because it's an eye for an eye. But now my name was all in the public domain with other soldiers from the regiment. I thought they were going to come for a hit on my house. I honestly had that in my head, and I was possessed by it. So I was like triple locking my doors. I was doing 5 and 20 meter check outside the front. I was looking for wires. I was so possessed that they were going to come for a hit, because 3 weeks prior to this, there was a raid in a London flat. And the other commander was on the ground with me during the Battle of Danny Boy. His address and information was found in a terrorist pack. And he got taken into hiding into a safe house. And then I'm like, shit, they're coming for me now. It was a nightmare. It was the worst, it was just the worst decade of my life. Nightmare. And I never got one text message, phone call, email from anyone, any ministers. It was just betrayal. And that's what my book is. My book is called Double Crossed, because, and it's a code of honor, a complete betrayal, because I honored my allegiance. I fought so hard for my country. That's my code of honor. And then when I was then fighting another battle on home soil, I was now in the UK fighting a harder battle than Danny Boy, because I never had the tools. I wasn't trained for all these allegations and solicitor meetings and looking through statements and highlighting statements. I didn't know what was going on. It made me go like slightly crazy.
So for those listening, it took 10 years, but in late December of 2014, the Housewood Inquiry, which cost millions and millions and millions of dollars.
31 million pound.
Yeah. So it returned its findings that no prisoners were murdered, no bodies have been mutilated. There was no evidence to the effect that detainees were deliberately hurt, or also much that the inquiry found allegations made by Iraqis and their lawyers were based on deliberate lies, speculation, hostility. Furthermore, Phil Shiner, the lawyer that you had mentioned earlier, also admitted guilt.
12 on 12 accounts.
Yes. That didn't actually happen until 2016. But you guys were exonerated and cleared of. Well, you were exonerated and cleared. Was anybody else from your unit involved in this, or was it just you?
No, there was everyone who was involved in Danny Boy.
Okay, everybody was. Okay.
Yeah.
So when you guys finally get exonerated, I mean, I know you feel relief, but I mean, are you happy? Can you even, feel like you got any sort of vindication out of it?
No, for me, it was too little, too late. I mean, I was angry. I was just pleased that it was all done with, because we, as a family, had gone through. It tested my relationship to the extreme breaking point. All of this, and I said that on my interview on TV. You know, he doesn't know how much damage he caused. You know, he fueled post-traumatic stress for my other soldiers. He ended marriages. You know, he ended careers, mine included. You know, all.
So did the British Army kick you out, or no? Did they get rid of you?
No, for me, it was the straw what broke the camel's back.
Okay, it made you decide to walk away?
Yeah.
Okay. Did anybody else get kicked out, or anybody else, have to deal with any repercussions from the British military?
Everyone who was with me that day is out.
Okay. Do you still get to keep your military cross? They didn't take it away from you or anything, did they?
No, absolutely. I mean, I speak about that in the book about, the questions that I asked my solicitor above everything else was, what will they strip me of my decoration? And like Winston Churchill once said, famously, a medal shines, but it also casts a shadow. And that's what it was on this now. I mean, I was, like I said, I was decorated for one of the highest valor medals, to then all of a sudden have a massive shadow on it because these allegations for so many years. And it's only now that I've really started to talk about the medal again, which is a shame, really.
Do you have any regrets?
I don't have any regrets. When my military career was one of the best years of my life, it really was.
Is there anything you think you could have done differently to avoid this?
No, definitely not.
All right.
No.
And I wasn't insinuating that you could have. I just was, sometimes with distance and reflection, you look at it and you go, well, if I had probably done this, it might have been viewed differently, kind of deal.
Nah, I mean, I'm a bit of a tactician now, because I served a further 11 years and went to another tour of Iraq and Afghanistan, and I obviously went on different battle command courses. So don't forget, I was only 23 years old and a young lance corporal, still learning my trade, all of a sudden getting this word of command or told to me to what I'm going to having to do. And it was kind of against a big stack of odds, but we achieved that. So actually, I wouldn't change anything. Look, we were hit hard, but we hit them harder. And that's the end state.
When you say you're willing to talk about your military cross now, when you look at it and you see it, what's the first thing that pops into your mind?
I'm still proud, I am. I'm still proud to wear it at certain occasions, whether it be Remembrance Sunday or whether it be a charity event. Look, I'm proud because I know what happened that day, and no one can take anything away. Yes, it's been a long road, and for a long time it was in a pouch in my sock drawer in my room. Believe it or not, my pants and socks drawer. It was just under there and just stacked away. Yeah. So, but when I look at it now, I mean, it was an incredible day. Other than my kids being born, it was the best day of my life. Taking my mum and dad and my wife to Buckingham Palace to experience, an incredible achievement. No one can take that away from me. But it was a journey.
Brian, it's an incredible story. It is bittersweet. I think you would agree that there is so many highs, but there was a big low for this whole thing. And, I just hope that you're in a place now with it where you are comfortable and you have been able to reconcile everything in your own mind, that you live in peace each day.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, we're the best we've ever been as a family. And do you know what? It's probably made us, I know it's a bit of a cliche saying, but it's probably made us stronger. And that's the good what comes out of it. Look, I always try and look on the growth side of things. A lot of people are fixed with post-traumatic stress, but I kind of look at the post-traumatic situation, how we can inspire, because I think is very important, because we as a breed of military have got so many assets, so many attributes which can be really helpful to people who are struggling or who are in business looking to make a big decision but don't want to take that risk. And actually, it's what we've done for such a long time. So let's go into that boardroom and let's talk about risk versus reward. Let's talk about decision making. Let's talk about in a split second. And if you get it wrong, it's life. So if you get it wrong, it's money. But you can recoup money. You can't recoup life. So let's have a look at that risk versus reward factor. and actually let's analyze it before we then commit. Cigar moment is so important that when you're under so much pressure, you're still entitled to your thought process moment. It doesn't matter how carnage the situation is. You as a commander are still entitled to that decision-making process. And that's what I kind of do now. I've got a clear vision of where I'm at the moment, and the family's really good. So it's all good.
Well, that's fantastic to hear. Again, the book is called Double Crossed, A Code of Honor, A Complete Betrayal, and Brian Wood is the author. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us. I wish you nothing but the best. I look upon you certainly with respectful and adoring eyes from the standpoint of you did right by your country, you did right by your fellow soldiers, and certainly all the other stuff that came and gone is just part of the trials and tribulations you went through. But you came out on top, Brian, and certainly, proud to meet you, proud to know you, and certainly thank you for your service, man.
Oh, thank you. It's likewise. It's mutual respect. You know the score without me blabbing on about it. It's massively mutual, and long may it continue. And thank you for what you've done as well, and for your service. It's incredible, and for documenting these stories, because it's really important that people, listen to not just mine, but to the other people that you've had on your show. It's so important that we get people's stories told, because we can't just sit in silence. They have to listen and have to hear these incredible stories.
Color Sergeant Brian Wood, and I will proudly add the MC for Military Cross at the end. Thank you so much for being part of the Hazard Ground.
Legendary. No, I appreciate it, man. Thank you.
You've been listening to the Hazard Ground Podcast, hosted by Mark Zeno and produced by Matt Pasquarella. If you have an interesting story to tell and you'd like to be on the show, send us an email at hazardgroundpodcast@gmail.com. And if you like the show, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.